Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Opening Doors, Accessing Education for Older Newcomer Youth in New York City, sponsored by the Newschools Center for New York City Affairs and the International Network for Public Schools. My name is Natasha Quiroga, and I am Director of Education Policy and InsideSchools at the Center for New York City Affairs, and I am delighted to be here with all of you today to explore such a critical issue in our education system, how we can better support older newcomer students as they navigate their educational journeys here in New York City. And we have a great group of panelists. As you can see here, I'm going to be your moderator today. So since the spring of 2022, more than 42,000 newcomer students have enrolled in New York City public schools. These students, who come from countries across Latin America, Africa, and many other regions, bring with them rich life experiences, diverse languages, and immense resilience. Among these thousands of students, many are older youth between the ages of 18 and 21 who face a unique set of challenges as they attempt to education access in our city. These older newcomers often arrive with interrupted educational histories, some due to migration, others due to conflict or socioeconomic difficulties. Under New York state education law, these young people have the right to go to public school until the end of the school year where they turn 21 years old. And many of them are incredibly motivated to complete their education, but they run up against barriers that make this difficult. And one of the most persistent challenges is enrollment. Some are told they're too old for high school and are redirected to adult education programs that don't match their academic goals or their dreams. They're often left out of the conversation and directed to programs that don't fully serve their long-term needs. Students also face language barriers, as many of those who have recently arrived speak languages like Arabic, Kular, or Wola, and may struggle to communicate with staff at family welcome centers and schools. And to compound these issues, some are told that there are no available spots in schools designed to meet their needs, such as international schools or transfer schools, and they're referred to adult education programs instead. InsideSchools has been working closely with many of today's speakers to help these resilient young people navigate the complexities of the system to enroll in school. In today's webinar, we're bringing together a diverse panel of experts who are at the forefront of tackling these issues. We'll hear from Shweta Ratra, principal of Crotona International High School, Alona Cohen, principal of Brooklyn Frontiers High School, Brenda Garcia, Interim Acting Chief in the Office of Multilingual Learners at the New York City Department of Education, Adam Abba, Founder and Executive Director of Africana, Nana Keita, a student at Ellis, and Lara Evangelista, Executive Director of International's Network for Public Schools. Together, they will share their firsthand experiences, explore the challenges faced by these students, and discuss how schools, community organizations, and policies can better collaborate to meet their needs. So I'm really excited for us to hear their insights and discuss how we can work together to ensure that these young people who bring so much potential to our schools and communities have access to the educational opportunities they deserve. Just some quick logistics. We will be recording today's webinar and it will be shared with all participants. And we're going to save some time at the end for Q&A, so please enter your questions in the Q&A feature, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. So let's start off and learn a little bit more about the options for older newcomer youth. We have Shweta Ratra, who's principal of Crotona International High School in the Bronx. So, Principal Ratra, what is an international school?
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Natasha, for giving me this opportunity to talk about our school and the work we do. So an international school is one of the 15 schools who are part of an international network of public school, which is an organization that supports us. We serve the students who are new to the country, 4 years or less. So we screen the students for different reasons. And if any kid is more than 4 years in the country, or maybe 5 years, sometimes we do have this flexibility, then that student is not enrolled in our school. They belong to other schools. And we do it for the purpose of like ensuring that our students who come into our building, they have similar experiences and they do not get overwhelmed when they are amongst several other native speakers, because that's where their self-esteem and other adolescent related issues they happen. So an international network, it's designed to serve the students who are new to the country. We are guided by 5 core principles, and we believe in experiential learning for the students through project-based instruction. Language acquisition is embedded in there. Plus, we focus heavily on social-emotional learning of the students because these kids are very new to the country. They're overage, undercredited. Many of them don't come with the intention to go to school, but once they come into the country, they realize, oh, this is the part of the, the part of the system, the way it works. They have to be in the school and they need to get enrolled. So it's an uphill challenge for us in many, many ways, but we provide all the system and structures plus supports to them to be able to function and thrive in this new country and new community. We want to make sure our students are not lost in the crowd, and we do everything possible by training our personnel, by providing them all the supports possible.
Great, thank you. It sounds like a great school for newcomer students. So how has the increase in the number of newcomers recently, within the past 2 years, how has that impacted your school community? How have you had to adapt to welcome these students?
So this is the interesting thing. We did not need to adapt because that's the work we have been doing for past 40 years as a network. And for my school, it has, prior to me, it started, I believe, in 2010. So it has existed for a while. And we have followed the same systems and structures and followed our core principles of Internationals Network that guide our work. So our personnel are trained to support the kids who are new to the country, support the kids who are overage, undercredited, coming from different languages. So our instructional model, our support model is designed to support that. So for us, it comes with its own set of challenges, but we have practiced it over multiple years and decades to overcome them. So for me, I would say it has been a positive impact to have the students because being in the Bronx, I had my student population was like catering to like particular demographics. I had more kids from Dominican Republic. I had mostly Spanish speaking kids. So this was an opportunity for me to diversify my student demographics. So I took it upon, and now I have students who are more from, also from Venezuela, West African countries. They're speaking different dialects, different languages, but at the same time, we are still diversifying. And more this diversity in our internationals model, more incentives for them to speak in English with each other. So their development of English, there's more urgency. It happens at more fast track. So for us, our register has gone up, which means we have more budget, we are providing more services to our students, we are giving them more individualized attention. So recently I hired a person from one of the family members of one of the students who speaks Wolof, another who speaks Soninke, because that's the need. That's a new need, relatively a new need for us. So we are able to provide that. I mean, the challenges are always the same that come with the population that we serve. We still have chronic absenteeism as an issue, overage, serving that population is an issue. A lot of students are coming from shelters, from temporary housing. There's lack of family support because the families, if they are there, they're doing multiple jobs. So we are like, when our students are successful, it's mostly that we are operating within the boundaries of the school. And there's definitely legal status is another challenge that we have to face. But we garner all the supports from organizations like you to provide services to our students.
Thank you. It sounds like you maybe had an easier time of it than most schools because you're already set up. Your system was already set up to support them. So were you able to receive any supports, if any, from the Department of Education and maybe some other groups?
Yeah, we have definitely increased funding based on like going over our registers. So there's the way the Department of Education works is more students we get, especially their Ls. There's a formula that works, so we get more funding, which really helps our students because then we are able to provide them, hire more like social workers for the support. We can provide more enrichment opportunities for them, create special classes after school for the students who are in high need of like language area. We have students who have interrupted education, students with they're called SLIFE kids with low language and interrupted education. Sometimes we get the kids who have not been in school at all, or they're at second grade level. But based on the requirements and the way the system is set up, they still have 4 years to meet the graduation requirements. So for us, it's a challenge. We are fighting against the time and the language. We know it takes a while for the kids to learn the language. Plus, it's a new culture and new community. Sometimes they even live in the families which are new to them, because if they were left living with a grandmother, they come to a house where the father may have a father, mother may have a new family as well, new step siblings, so there are a lot of different kind of challenges we have, but we have been able to get a lot of support from the International Network of Public Schools, which is our parent organization. And from there, we get a lot of support in terms of professional development for our teachers. There are several working groups. There's critical friends group for the principals and APs to come together. And the support comes in the form of support services for the students. It comes in the form of college career readiness. Principals have critical friends group where they can, because our challenges are very unique, which are very different from other traditional schools in the system. So we are able to get together through the Internationals Network, working groups, and we are able to problem solve together. Besides that, I think something that Department of Education has done really well for past couple of years is creating the career connected learning opportunities. So SYEP, career connected pathways, workplace challenge. These are really, really beneficial because our students can get paid internships. So they're learning, they're moving towards the college and career readiness, plus they're also getting paid.
Yeah, that's definitely really helpful for these students. So what else would you need to better support your students?
What we really need is our system to understand that the needs of this student population is very unique. And this year, past few years, I would say, since we had the higher influx of the kids coming new to the country, and where we say we have a crisis where there are refugees coming and all that, we don't see that. We see them as assets, right? But the system is not really designed as yet for that. They have to really understand what are the needs of the students and the schools in this particular area. So there's a lot of policies and a lot of expectations that are aligned to the kids who are born in the country, right? Or the kids who are ELs, but they're long-term ELs. They have been in the country for a while. But new arrival ELs is a completely different niche population, right? Plus, if you add overage to it, then it creates another level of challenge. So a lot of the policies are not designed even in terms of accountability from the schools, right? We are still expected to graduate the kids in 4 years. Our students still have to be out of the system at 21. Even though we keep the students, we help them graduate, but then they count for our 6-year graduation rate, not our 4-year graduation rate. So our accountability goes down in that way, even though we believe in serving the kids. We take our kids after October 31st, right? Why? Because the kids are not coming according to the Department of Education timeline. They're coming in to country even in June, May, April. And I've taken the kids every single month because they have to go somewhere. There are other schools who are not willing to take them. What will the families do? They have to start somewhere, and earlier they start, earlier they'll be able to, get on the path of college and career. So those are some kind of, the challenges, plus legal supports, understanding the needs of undocumented kids and providing services to them. Opening up the policies to understand that this small population will not be able to get the service because of their different status that they have.
Right. Yeah, I know you've been very accommodating when we come to you and say we have a couple of young people who need to enroll in the middle of the school year. So we definitely appreciate your partnership there. And you kind of touched upon this, but do you have any other recommendations for the city to better support this population?
Yeah, I can go a little bit deeper on what policies and practices that I'm talking about. For example, one of the barriers, paid internship, is that because of the budgetary reasons and all, which are legitimate and justified, but there is limited. There's a certain point after which we cannot pay our students for paid internships in the CPP system that we have. So if for this particular student population, which is overage, undercredited, right, new to the country, if those cutoffs can be removed, right? Because the idea is to keep them in the school. If they're overage, they really want to work to support themselves and their families, right? Some of them are homeless. They need to, the school will not be a priority for them if they cannot survive and meet the basic needs. So if we want to keep them in the school, we need to sometimes come off those cutoffs, which may be sometimes just as low as $590. Living in New York at $590 is not possible. And that too, that's a stipend. That's not even a monthly thing, you know? So I think those are specifically the things that I would say. Even the cutoff age is another thing where, like at 21, if a kid is entering my school at 18 or 19 years old, has no credits, I'm going to put the kid in 9th grade. Plus, they have to learn the language. 4 years for any kid to learn the language is not enough. Sometimes they need an extra year to be in the school, but then they become our 6th-year graduates, you know? So those are the kind of things that, and there are quite a few of them. I just hope for more understanding and changing the policies first from this with the city and then of course with the state.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Barraza, for that background of international schools and for all the work that you're doing for these young people. You know, it is challenging, but they also bring a lot of rewards to your school community. So thank you. So we've heard a little bit about international schools. Now let's hear a little bit about transfer schools, which you may have heard about. And if not, we have Alana Cohen, who is principal at Brooklyn Frontiers High School. Let's see if she is here. So Principal Cohen, can you share with us a little bit more about what is a transfer school?
Sure. So transfer schools are schools that were specifically designed for students who are overage and undercredited, and for a whole host of reasons, their original school placement experience wasn't successful for them. So typically, transfer schools serve students between the ages of 16 and 21, and we're able to admit students into our school regardless of the time of year. And we have rolling admissions. And the idea is that we don't have grade levels. We program students for the classes that they need in order to complete their diploma. And so we're able to catch students up who might have fallen behind. So we tend to we don't work on cohorts. We really have a very individualized system. Every transfer school does. It's very individualized programming and a lot of supports for students. So we really find that there's a whole host of different reasons that students tend to not have been successful in their first placement in the city. And some of them are academic, some of them are social emotional, and for many students, it's actually a combination of both. And so we have a lot of embedded supports. All of the transfer schools now are run in partnership with community-based organizations. So there are additional staff members that really guide students to make decisions and to deal with challenges that they're having that prevent them from coming to school or being successful when they are in school, whether they're academic or social emotional. And each transfer school kind of has, I would say, a different flavor. So there have been transfer schools around for a while now that that have served English language learners predominantly. Our school had been set up originally when we opened in 2011. It was to serve students who were entering high school having never been to high school before, entering a transfer school having never been to high school before, but had been held back twice beforehand. So that was that's still the population that we serve. We serve a traditional transfer school population of students who've started high school and went on to look for another opportunity. But we also take students who are 16 years old and have never been to high school before, with the idea being that those students really need the most support, and rather than put them in a high school where they may not be supported, their needs may not be supported, and we may lose them to the system, they would come to us. And so recently we've expanded, and I would say about given the population we were targeting, we have about 40 to 50% of students are students with IEPs. So our special education department was always our biggest department. And recently we've started, and when I say recently, very recently, it was March, we really started taking newcomer students. And that was for us, like, it's very new. There are transfer schools that have been doing it for a while, but we're sort of learning how to navigate these three different unique populations that have a lot of commonalities between them.
Can you talk a little bit more how you've adapted? I mean, I know you sort of recently started taking these students. I know we work with you. We've sent you a couple of our young people.
Yeah.
Can you share more specifically how you've adapted?
So for us, it's been in terms of the population on paper, I guess I would say, it's been a huge shift. We really have, because we were so focused on providing supports for students with disabilities, we typically did not have any beginning multi-language learners. We didn't have the staffing for it. We didn't have an ENL teacher. We only have 18 teachers on staff. And so we're a very small school. We only have 100 at capacity. We serve 175 students. So for us, it really meant a couple of things. One is just sort of the bare bones accountability of having ENL teachers, because they obviously require mandated supports and we have to provide those. But I think more importantly, it's making sure that it's not just somebody with the right license serving the students, but it's somebody with the right skills, and that we have the embedded supports academically. We felt, and I think our infrastructure, given who we'd served previously, really didn't require a whole lot of shifts in order to support the newcomer students, because we were individualizing our approach to students anyway. And we have a lot of extra support for the students. We are for sure learning how to connect with different resources and understanding the needs. But in terms of infrastructure, that was there. For the social emotional supports, I would say in terms of the academic supports, we've really had to better understand how to work with the students. And we have sort of an added challenge, I would say, that we don't exclusively serve a population of newcomers. And so we have some classes that are mostly newcomers, and then we have classes that don't have another teacher, maybe a teacher who doesn't have an ENL background. And they have all these other students, the more traditional transfer students. So how to mesh those academic supports. And what I would say is, for us, what we realized is the good news is that the instruction that is good for the newcomers is actually good for everybody. And I think it's really, I think as a school, I think it's really pushed us to up our game and become better at instruction, because it's so obvious. I think sometimes it's challenging to know when you're not doing exactly what you need to do to get the more traditional native speakers what they need. But it becomes very obvious when the newcomer students aren't getting what they need in the classroom. And so it's really helped us develop better protocols for collaboration, for teaching basic language skills, for reading comprehension, for just connecting students to each other. And I think that, I mean, there's not a single person in this school who doesn't think that it's been like the greatest thing that's happened to us in terms of our community since when we started the school a long time ago. It's really kind of been re-energizing and exciting people who've been here for a while. And I think amongst the students, it's been incredibly positive. We have a lot of students whose parents were not born in the US, and they speak other languages, but they're hesitant to do that in school until now there are actually students around them that need that support sometimes, and they jump in and they do it. And we've discovered all kinds of students who students who we had no idea were actually fluent in other languages. But it's just been very, very positive for us, and it's a huge learning experience. But it's so we're really excited to have embarked on it. And it was the need. So I mentioned that there are transfer schools that specifically served English language learners. Those were all full with waiting lists once there was an influx. And for us, coming post-pandemic, as a lot of schools, our registers were low. And the fact of the matter is there was a shift in the need of what the student population in the city required. And it made sense for us to shift in this direction as well.
Right. So you've kind of touched on this, but can you share a little bit more about, what supports you receive from the Department of Education and then other groups, but then also what else do you need? I mean, as you're shifting, adding these students to your school community, what else would you need?
Right. So in terms of supports, I think like our superintendency has been, we're not the only transfer school that's shifted and taken a lot more newcomers. And I think that the superintendent's office is really cognizant of that. And there were schools last year that had, before us, started taking more more newcomer students. And they were part of Project Soaring, which was a collaboration to work with the Internationals Network. We're very excited to be part of that this year. Last year, we were able to also, because of additional funding we received, we were able to contract directly with the Internationals Network and get instructional coaching and instructional supports and leadership coaching to help us understand what we needed to have in place. I think that so I think like for us, our first priority was around learning the instructional practices that we need to learn for the teachers, for myself, for everybody around here. And I think what we're finding that we're needing, I think Shweta touched on a lot of it. So one is around the accountability, like the reason that schools are not taking newcomer students often or older newcomer students, is because they know that it's already by definition going to hurt their accountability. And I think that it seems to me like a fairly easy fix. And but I think that people need to understand that there is an incentive and a disincentive that goes along with the accountability structures, and that has to be something that's addressed. I think that the other challenge for us is that most of our older newcomer students are also unaccompanied, and they're living in shelters. And what we found is that there's been terrible communication between, or I would say no communication between the DOE and the supports in the shelter system, so that there is no sort of clarity about, this is a student who is enrolled in school, they should not be kicked out of their placement after 60 days. And there have been now more things put in place, and we could provide letters, but I think if there were more embedded supports in these places where we know this is where our students live, and if there were more supports and better communication structure between us and I think the shelter system specifically, I think that would really help a lot of our students. I mean, it's I'm sure I'm telling everybody here something they already know. I'm newer to this work, but incredibly resilient students we had students who were kicked out of the shelter system, didn't realize that they actually had a right to be there, and were sleeping on the subway, but still attending school every day. And, obviously once we were aware of that, we were able to intervene, but sometimes we're not aware of that. And so I think as much transparency as possible would be helpful. Yeah, I think those I would name as the two major things.
Those are great recommendations. I think something that the city, and different agencies should take into account. So thank you so much, Ms. Bokon, for sharing your perspective and helping us learn a little bit more about transfer schools and what your school and transfer schools are doing for older newcomer youth. So now let's shift and hear from Brenda Garcia. She is the interim acting chief in the Office of Multilingual Learners at the New York City Department of Education. So hi, Brenda. Can you share with us more about what the DOE is doing to support older newcomer youth?
Sure. Thank you, Natasha, for having me. And thank you, Principal Ratra and Principal Cohen, for sharing. And thank you for highlighting this topic. It's something that's top of mind for us every day in the Office of Multilingual Learners. So to begin with, I want to just highlight how we work within Project Open Arms, right? Project Open Arms is a coordinated effort to support our newcomers and make sure that they're provided a full range of services. So it is multi-agency plan. We collaborate with MOIA, the Mayor's Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, the Department of Social Services, ACS, and many other agencies. And the idea here is to highlight wraparound services to ensure that our newcomer families and their children have access to the critical academic and social, emotional, and language supports that they need in order to be successful in our schools. In terms of the educational options that we offer for our older newcomers, there are multiple education options too that you've heard about today, the international high schools and the transfer high schools, but also our traditional high schools. All of our high schools are prepared to provide the language supports, the socio-emotional supports, and the academic supports for our students. And we work really closely with our superintendents to ensure that our schools receive that support. In addition to our traditional high schools, we do have our high school equivalency programs, right, known as our GED programs. Pathways to Graduation, it's a full-time program. We have over 70 locations, and that helps students who are 18 to 21 years old earn their high school equivalency diplomas. An additional new program is the Young Adult Bridge Program. This is a collaboration between our school, New York City Public Schools, and State Ed. And it's a part-time program. It offers English as a new language classes for students who are 18 to 20 looking to earn a high school equivalency program. And so this is now up and running. It's something that started last year. It's offered Mondays through Thursdays in the evenings, 4 to 8, so that young people who may need to work during the day can work during the day and they can attend classes at night.
Thank you for sharing that. I know the YAD program, we've recommended and referred several of the young people we work with to that program. And so that's been a great addition, especially because a lot of the other programs were full. So can you maybe talk a little bit more about the reality, right? I mean, these programs, the options that exist are great for the students, but what is the reality for these students coming from countries all over the world?
Thank you for that question. So in New York City, we're unique, right? We're so proud of the diversity of our communities and how that's reflected in our classrooms. And every day we bring together almost 1 million students from different backgrounds from all corners of the world. And that has been the case for many years. We know that arriving in a new country and attending a new school, and in addition to that, learning a new language is very challenging for our new New Yorkers, and we're committed to providing a welcoming and inclusive environment for students and our families. Our office specifically works with our schools to provide culturally informed language access for students and families. And so what does that look like for the student in the classroom? That could be an English as a new language setting, a bilingual education setting, and for our families, ensuring that they have translation or interpretation available because that is, their right. We also want to consider their social emotional needs, right, and integrate trauma-informed practices into instruction. And that's something that Project Open Arms has been really working closely with the National Center for School Crisis and Bereavement to offer support to schools and districts via Project Open Arms learning sessions that we have to support them professionally. In addition, we want to create school environments that really foster a sense of belonging, right? Our office specifically really operationalizes this. We work really closely with our advocates, listening, responding, and I think that many of the efforts that you see both from our office and also from New York City Public Schools is a result of many of think tanks and groups that have come together to advocate and our responsiveness to those needs. We also work really closely with our district instructional and policy leaders, including our superintendents. Think some of the support that Principal Cohen mentioned, the transfer schools, is a result of a very close collaboration that our office started a couple of years ago with Superintendent Sullivan, who's the superintendent of our transfer schools. And we connect with the field. We provide ongoing professional support. We do have enrollment supports available to families at the Arrival Center inside the Roosevelt Hotel. Our elementary school students, which they can enroll over the counter, our high school students enroll at the family welcome centers. And through all of these processes, families are able to get the necessary supports via translation and interpretation. And that's something that we work really closely with our Family Welcome Center staff to ensure that we're upholding that right of families.
So that's the adaptation that is needed when we have more of these students coming in. So that's helpful to know. So what policy or system shift would support older newcomers' youth more effectively? And you kind of touched on some of like the creation of programs, but what else?
Sure. So I do want to highlight that, as a system, we have continuously had influxes of newly arrived students. It's looked different over the years, right? But we have been responsive to this. In this really large wave, right, that we've been experiencing over the past few years, really the work of Project Open Arms has helped us make shifts to better support our new New Yorkers citywide, because really we speak to every superintendent, every school has been impacted. We had an Open Arms advocate think tank, and that really heightened our awareness on the needs for supporting our older newcomers. And we created an older youth work group consisting of central team members and superintendents. And as a result of that, we developed older youth admissions and enrollment guidance for older youth. And we continue this work. We continue to meet with stakeholders, school building leaders, district leaders to ensure we're progress monitoring our systems. Our office specifically has worked with the Office of Students and Temporary Housing, so the STH office and foster care, to provide trainings to representatives from 19 districts. Those are that are like our STH points. And that's something that we want to be able to continue to do on an ongoing basis, right? So being able to expand that to all districts and being able to ensure that we're able to provide that robust support from the district to the school level.
Great, thank you. That's helpful to know. And I see a question asking a little bit more about the YAB program. Could you maybe expand like what it stands for and just a little bit more? Because I know it's a relatively new program, so maybe not everybody knows about it.
Sure. So YAB, it stands for Young Adult Bridge Program. That's a collaboration, again, between New York City Public Schools and State Ed. And it's some program that lives in our District 79, so under Superintendent Glenda Esperance. And it's for students 18 to 20 years old. It's an ENL program. So kids take ENL and then that leads to GED classes. If students age out, then they are able to continue in our adult ed programs and in the adult ed programs, and they can complete their GED classes. It is offered in 4 of the 5 boroughs right now, and it's a Monday through Friday program, 4 to 8. I'm happy to get more information as a follow-up and provide it to you, Natasha.
Yeah, and we're going to be sharing the link of the recording, and so any of these links to the programs we can also send out and then the links that are also being included in the chat as well. So thank you so much, Brenda, for sharing that perspective and all the programs that the DOE is doing. So let's see, we've heard from schools, we've heard from the DOE, now let's take it to the community and hear from the community. So for that perspective, we have Adama Ba, who's the founder and executive director of Africana. So hi, Adama, can you share with us a little bit more about Africana and why you founded it?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adama. So I've been doing immigration, food justice, and housing justice for the last 18 years. But when the migrant crisis happened, or excuse me, not the migrant crisis, when the newly arrived migrants came, I had to start an organization because there's a difference between advocating solo and advocating under an organization. So I didn't have a name. Thanks to the thousands of Venezuelans that came that kept asking me, where are you from? And I would say Africana. So that is how the organization got its name. So to give you a brief breakdown of what happened is, it's been 2 years since buses arrived from Texas. The misconceptions that they were forced here, they were not forced here. These are all people who wanted to come here. We did warn the city that there were buses coming to New York, because prior to New York getting buses, DC was also getting buses. And also Abbott did say he was going to send buses. So we did kind of have a heads up that this was going to happen. We had a meeting with the city prior to the first bus arrival, and we were giving them a layout of what was needed. And one of the things that were needed was school enrollment, school support, education. So we brought that up as one of the topics because we had asked our partners who were receiving buses what were some of the challenges. So fast forward a week later, the first bus came. And of course, they were all just families. And so what we did is we welcomed them and we told them about school. At the time, the city was not accepting newly arrived migrants as shelter system. So we had partners in each site to help them get into the shelter system. And at the time, they also were not supported in school enrollment. So we had to step in and start doing that school enrollment part. And then I think a couple of weeks later, then we started getting about 1,000 to 2,000 people a day. We're talking about 15 buses, 16 buses, and I was there every day for the buses. I was there for the first bus, and I was there for the last bus at Port Authority. Now we shift over to Penn Station. And one of the challenges that we saw many challenges, but school enrollment was a big thing. They were getting off the buses, they were being shipped to their shelter system where they weren't getting case management or services. And so the families knew that they had to put their children in school, they just didn't know how to. So they were coming back to Port Authority and asking us how to do that. We were referring families to Welcome Center, but it was very different because they didn't have a lot of the documents that they needed to enroll in school, or the Welcome Centers were telling them that you need this document, you need that document. So we needed to put on our advocate hat and it was like, no, you're not supposed to ask for that. So the Welcome Centers are helpful, but they weren't catered to this type of community that was coming. But I want to focus more on the group that I work with. I primarily work with Black migrants. Black migrants weren't getting access to the buses that were coming from Texas because of the anti-Blackness that exists at the border. So Black migrants were coming, but they were coming through bus routes. They were coming through flights. They were coming through different means of transportation. And a lot of them were young. A lot of them were teenagers. There were a lot of families. But Black migrants weren't going directly into the shelter system, so the city did not recognize them. Black migrants were going into mosques, they were going into churches, they were going into community centers, and they were living there. And so when I found this out, I said, no, there's a whole shelter for you guys. Come on. So we advocated and we finally got shelters for Black migrants to come in. And I thought that would be just housing, but we turned into more. It turned into mental health support. It turned into needing language access because we have prepared just for Spanish speakers. We just prepared for migrants coming from South America. And that's across the country. So we heard this problem in Ohio. We heard about this problem in Texas, in Chicago, and other areas, that they were not prepared for Black migrants that spoke other languages. And so the city kept promoting the language line. And we're like, that's rude. That's very insulting. We have to humanize the people that are coming. You can't say one group, we have a Spanish speaker, another group because you speak another. Hold on, let me call the language line. And in reality, the language line wasn't working because if we call the language line, the families were there for hours waiting for translators. And so they would say, we cannot translate because we are not a vendor or we weren't certified. But then it's like, how do you help the family? You let them sit there for 4 hours before you service them? And I understand there's policy and rules, but we had to figure out how to help and support these families. And we had to get education advocates involved and saying, well, the parents are allowed to have a parent advocate or some kind of advocate. So yes, so we had to change the roles that we were playing. And the story's gonna go longer, and I want to open it to questions. But fast forward, we got kicked out of Port Authority by the city, and we finally got a location in Harlem. In Harlem, where we are located now, we see about 300 to 400 people a day. We are also now in Brooklyn and Hall Street. We're also downtown in St. Bridges. And the biggest thing that we keep hearing is school enrollment issue, especially for people that look like me and speak other languages. It's such a challenge. I'll give you an example. We had a young girl who was in a shelter system in Washington Heights. They were Haitian Creole speakers. Washington Heights is historically Dominican. They were not ready for her. She only spoke French and Haitian Creole. They did not have any parent coordinator to help her that spoke the language. The language line wasn't working. But the coordinator who works there was like, let me call Adama. And we put our hands together. We reached out to Project Russo. And we actually got the child out of that school and transferred into another school. Same school had another situation with a young girl from Guinea who arrived with her family, but they didn't have anyone that spoke Pular. Mom only spoke Pular. Same thing. We reached out to Project Russo, and then we got them out of that school into school that is mostly French, and the family is extremely happy. And then we saw a huge influx of more people coming in. The model that Africana has is we don't do this work alone. It is impossible to do this work alone. You will get burnt out and you will not service the community the proper way. So we've been blessed to have Inside School at our office who have been supporting us, who have been actually helping us get kids enrolled in school. And I want to touch on the 18 to 24 years old. For people who are 18 to 24, they're really not 18 to 24. Smugglers actually change their passport in order for them to come to the country. I personally seen it myself plenty of times. I've had the privilege to travel to countries this summer that had the highest number of Black migrants coming and meeting with and trying to understand this immigration of Black migrants better. And we saw it. Smugglers do change their date of birth, and you visibly see these children who clearly look like they're 14, but the city does not believe them, and no one believes them, but he's a child. We've met children who are child soldiers. We've met children who unfortunately have been assaulted. So we've met a range of kids that were coming, and how do you support them and help them that a system is not ready for? So we had to advocate for system change. But we cannot do this alone. So we relied on Inside School to actually enroll people in school, because what we were doing was bringing a group of them. So if you were as a bunch of Mauritanian kids, we brought a Mauritanian English speaker to go with them to the Welcome Center and help them enroll. But now Inside School does that, so my team is busy with something else. But as we're expanding, as we're seeing, migration is not going to stop. It's going to continue to happen. We see what's happening in Sudan. We see what's happening in the Middle East. We see what's happening in Congo. We're currently seeing what's happening in South America. People are always going to come to the United States, and we have to prepare for them. And always the first line of defense is schools. The first support. I have unfortunately got school because of my immigration issues, but eventually I was able to go back. But my teachers were the ones who saved me. My teachers were the ones who helped me navigate the system, because I did not know what to do. My teachers, admitted years later, we didn't know what to do. We were just going along until we figured it out. But I would not be a citizen today had it not been for my teachers supporting me and advocating for me. And we are stretched very thin, and we always tell our kids, rely on your school for support. Talk to them. Tell them what you need. And one of the biggest challenges that we still see today is language access. For example, Pular is spoken all over Africa, but depending on what the region is spoken differently. And the language line only has Pular from Senegal, which is completely different from Guinea, from Pular from Guinea, or Pular from Mauritania. And so when we keep educating, it's like, this is why the language line doesn't work. You're not humanizing the people properly, and you're not giving them the right translation. And I know that a lot of the kids say it's French, but they found that if they say French, they get more help. So throughout South America, everyone only speaks Spanish. But if you say French, you likely find some French person around there and they will help you. There's likely someone who's working there an internship that speaks French. They saw that French is their survival language, so they stick to that. But we tell them, no, you need to stay what your native language is so that we can help you better, so that we can understand better. And I encourage everyone on this call, if you have students, ask them, what is your native language? Ask them to not be afraid to say what those native languages, because we have seen cases that turn bad in immigration court because they said French. And French is not their native language, so they're not understanding. So this is why know your rights are so important. And for me, I'm really grateful, and I could go on forever, but I'm really grateful for Inside Schools. This work is dear to me. Education is dear to me. These kids really do want to go to school. Some of them are so funny and so talented. I joke with my kids. I'm like, you guys have to finish school because I want a plane. I want a helicopter. And we joke about it. But to hear about what they want to become. And oftentimes when I ask them, hey, what do you want to be? Where do you want to study? And they always tell me, I don't know. No one asked me that. And it hurts me. But they were like, but I heard being a doctor is awesome, or being a nurse is awesome. And I'm like, you should become a nurse and you're going to be making this amount of money so I can retire. And we turn it into a joke. So I'm so proud of my kids, and you guys all know how intelligent they are. They are going to be our next generation doctors. They're going to be our next generation politicians.
Thank you, Adama, for sharing all that. And thank you for all the work that you've done and doing for these young people. So one last question. I know you probably have a lot of thoughts on this. What policy or system shifts would support older newcomers, especially older Black newcomer youth, more effectively?
I think definitely partner with grassroots community-based organizations, because this is a new population to the city. And unfortunately, we only know about a community when a crisis happens. We saw it with the Bronx Fire. Nobody knew that there was a whole entire Gambian community in the Bronx until that fire happened. And so now everyone's scrambling around trying to figure out how to service them. And I think we have to shift with these vendors and because we didn't know that we could become vendors for the DOE until someone was like, we're always calling for translators. Are you a vendor? So we could pay you. And I'm like, wait, you could have paid me this entire time. So I think we have to share that more and partner with community-based organizations, houses of worship, to support the communities that we're seeing. Because for us at our office, when we see Asians or other ethnic groups, we're not doing them justice if we just hide them in our office and say, go on. We connect them with community and make sure that they're supported. There's a huge wave of Afghanis that came who are in high school, but we shouldn't be servicing. There's an entire organization that's supporting them, and we make sure we connect them with community. Because there's a school component, there's a mental health component, and the mental health is so important. For example, we started sex education in our office. And I was actually surprised that it went very well, because it's such a taboo conversation in a lot of the regions that they were coming. And so for us to have that conversation, the only feedback I got was like, we don't want you in the room, Adama, when we're talking about this. And I'm like, okay, I'll leave. But whatever it is for them to have that conversation helps. So I think we have to shift the way we talk about working with others. And it's HIPAA, we have to be careful. We don't know who you are. We're a nonprofit organization. We have the interest of the youth. We're actually giving you the youth. But once they leave your school, what's next? Where are they going to lay their heads? That's our job, to advocate and make sure when they miss their cultural food. Some schools have figured out a way to get them their cultural food, but we have the cultural food in our office. So once in a while, we can give them the food. So we definitely have to partner with more organizations and help them fill out that vendor form.
Okay. Thank you so much, Adama, for sharing that perspective. It's really helpful to hear. So now we're going to hear from a student herself. We've been talking a lot about older newcomer youth, so let's get the perspective of the actual student. So we have Nana, who is a 12th grader at Ellis. And are you on? There you are. Nana, can you tell us a little bit more where you're from? How old were you when you came to New York City, and where you go to school?
Hi, my name is Nana Keita. I'm from Mali. When I came to New York, I was 17 years old. Yeah.
Great. And where do you go to school now?
Oh, I'm going to LS.
Okay, great. And can you share a little bit about your experience? What was it like for you to enroll in Ellis, and what has your experience been there?
So I can say being at LS was really, really good for me. At the first time when I go to LS, like I was like, I don't wanna sit there because everybody speak like Spanish, English. Like I see only two people who speak French. It was no easy for me. The teacher also speak in English and Spanish. So sometimes it was difficult. And when I was in class the first day of school, my teacher asked me, Nana, what's your name? I was like, I don't know what to say because I don't know nothing. And I say my name is Mali. Mali is my country, but I didn't know. And one of my classmates tell me, no, she asked you about your name. What? Comment tu t'appelles? And I say, oh, my name is Nana. Yeah, it was really difficult, but Ellis was a good thing for me because they helped me a lot. Yeah, even though sometimes I have a lot of problem, I have people there who can help me, who I can talk to, and I have many opportunities there, like internship, and they pay me for that, of course. Yeah, and like sometimes, like I can say last year I was in problem. I don't have no place to live, nothing. I go tell the school I have no place to live. I don't know how to do it, and they find a shelter for me. Yeah, they help me a lot. And even though in English, sometimes like they tell me to do like translate. I have some people who speak French. They call them to help to come help me to talk what I want to say. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad that your school had folks who could help. So maybe you could expand a little bit more. Like, what else helped you while in school? You talked about some of the programs, but what else helped you?
Oh, and also, at least like now I'm living in Brooklyn, and every day I can say I came late at school, but they understand why I came to school late. It's too far, and it's a lot of things that they do for me. So I can say I need little bit help for English. Yeah, I need a little bit help for English. So they help me also like Saturday Academy to prepare me for my English, Gaston. Yeah, after school, they're here for me to improve. Like, yeah, someday I'm like, I don't wanna go to school. I don't wanna go to school. Yeah, they call me, no, don't do that, don't give up. They always encourage me, yeah, in that. And I'm work like two different jobs with my like with my internship. My school principal, she tell me you don't have to do two jobs. If you want, you can come at Ellis. We're gonna give you a lot of internship. If you do that, you have an experience, and you're gonna. I'm gonna pay for you for that. We're gonna pay for you for that. And say, yeah. Sometimes it's not easy, but if you have like people around of you who care about you, it's gonna be easy.
Yeah.
Yes, Ellis is like family. They take care of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It's great that you have people who support you and are working with you to help you alleviate some of your challenges finding, an internship so you don't have to work those two jobs. And that is a long commute. So thank you for sharing that. Do you have any thoughts like what else could have helped you in school, or just like adjusting to school?
Adapting in school.
Like what else would you have needed? Would you like to see for other students like you?
Other a student like me, so I can say like basically like they need like people like me, they need help. I know they need help. So at Ellis, what I like to, they make us like a group. They make a group sometimes. People who speak Spanish, who speak French, and another language. We have a lot of language there. So that's really good for a student like me because it helps us to improve our English. Because at the group, like everybody speak another language. If you wanna speak to other people, you have to speak in English. You really need to speak in English because other people don't understand English. Yeah, you try. So I have a lot of people like me there, but small group help a lot. And an internship, some people don't have paper. Like internship can help them. Like so, me, I can say I have a lot of problem, but I have a paper that helped me a lot. Some people don't have paper, they don't have a working permit, like don't have parents also. And when I go to a shelter that the school send me to, so I'm allowed to help other people because I find like two other people there. When they go there, they tell me they wanna go to school, and I say, why you doesn't come to my school? And they say, they can't. And I call my principal to ask her. I have another girl here. They want to go to school. They come from another country. They don't have paper, nothing. And she say, if there is good, okay, I can take them. Everything is fine for me. So there is at Alice now, there is nice too, and they like there. And there have a lot of support there.
Great. So you're helping other students too. That's fantastic to hear. So thank you for sharing that, your story, your experiences. Can we maybe end on what are your dreams for after high school once you're done?
Oh, after high school, I wanna go to college. Yeah, but I wanna go to college to start like computer science. Yeah, because I really like math and I like everything about technology. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And we wish you the best on that and finishing up your last year of high school and going on to college. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And so we've heard a lot from the schools, the DOE, the community, students themselves. Let's turn over to hearing more about how best to support schools as they support older newcomer youth. We have Lada, who is the Executive Director of the International Network for Public Schools. Can you share a little bit more about the network? I mean, we've heard about one of your high schools, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the network itself.
Sure. Actually, two, because one of them is Schwetta School, and then Nana comes from Ellis Prep, which is our school in the Bronx for older newcomers. Yeah, so great to be here with this amazing panel. And I'm the Executive Director of Internationals. We're the only nonprofit or educational nonprofit organization that partners with the public school system to provide immigrant multilingual learners with a high quality education so they can achieve their goals and thrive in their communities. As you heard a little bit before, we've been doing this work for many, many years. Our first school opened almost 40 years ago, and the organization is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. So we work directly with school leaders, districts, to help them to create innovative learning environments that meet the unique needs of this population, both their academic needs and their social needs. And so when we partner with schools, we're not just supporting the schools, but we're also helping them to be part of this collaborative learning network to learn together about how to best support these newcomer students. I think Brenda was saying that these waves happen, we've served these waves for many years, and our schools have learned through each wave, and we've developed kind of expertise in certain areas. And so we work together both with this collaborative network, with our with leaders, with the system, to really develop a shared knowledge base, build relationships, and kind of really transform the system to best serve these amazing young people.
Great. Well, we are so glad that you are around as well. So can you share a little bit more now about Project Soaring? What it is, why you developed it?
Yeah, sure. So, we've had this network of schools. We have 15 high schools and a middle school here in New York City, 31 around the country that have done this work for many years. And with this latest influx, we just had a lot more folks reaching out to us saying, hey, can we learn from you, right? We'd like to learn more about your instructional model. We'd learn about some of the structures that you use to best support students, some of the partnerships that you have. And so, we're not a huge organization, and we don't have huge capacity to go into every single school and work with each individual school in a way. And really, what we found the powerful um, lever to make change is through developing networks, right? And so we decided that we needed to partner with some schools and learn from them as well, right? About what, given their context, which is different than having an international, whole school international context. So we knew that this work had to be transformative. We knew it had to happen at every level of a school and a system. We also knew what Alona highlighted, which is really that it is just good instruction for all students, and lots of students can benefit. There was just a study actually that came out highlighting that, about how when newcomer English learners enter the system, often it raises the achievement of other students around them as well, if you're serving them well. So we designed Project Soaring to create a collaborative network of district leaders, school leaders, assistant principals, counselors, and teachers across schools to develop transformational teams within each of those schools. And so last year, we worked with 10 schools, again, across 3 districts, working with those role-like cohorts to then build a team within their school to say, okay, what are the shifts given our context, right? And given what we're learning from the internationals network approach, from the schools that have existed, what shifts do we need to make in our schools to better serve this population? And what we found at the end of the year, when we were bringing those teams together from the schools, was that a lot of them started realizing, yeah, actually, these shifts are just good for all the students in our building, right? Having teachers work together and thinking about, making, comprehensible input for students and language objectives and, collaborative structures and student discussions, all the things that are developing students' language and building off of their home language is actually good for other students as well. It's just good instruction. And so we have a very specific instructional model that we work with schools to understand and implement in their context, but we also have kind of our asset-based community culture, like how that's built in to the work that we do, the structures that have helped our schools to be successful, and how we do ongoing staffing and staff learning. And so each of those pieces are kind of built over the course of the year that we work with schools. They're building a network among themselves. They're building a team in their buildings. And then we do some coaching, leadership coaching in between to help the leader to kind of create some coherence around this work in their building, so that the shifts can happen school-wide.
That's great, and definitely needed for schools. So how do people get involved with Project Soaring? Schools are interested.
Well, they reach out. I mean, Alona took the initiative to reach out and say, hey, I have this new population and we'd love to learn from you. And we'd like to make some shifts in our schools to better serve them. And so last year we had a cohort of 10. We're continuing with them in a year 2 to kind of do some deeper implementation of the strategic plans they developed. And this year we have a new cohort of about 10 schools that we'll be working with across the city. Again.
Great. We'll be sure to include your contact information in the follow-up email, because I'm sure there's some folks who are on who want to learn more. So we've heard some recommendations from our other speakers. In your opinion, based on your perspective, your many years of experience, what policy or system shifts would support older newcomer students more effectively?
I mean, yeah, I think it's been said, the accountability system is, both Shweta and Alona said it. It's it's an issue, right? I mean, it's when a student walks in and they're 19 years old or they're 18 years old and they're coming into the system, even if you do graduate them, at 22, they aren't going to count towards you. If they're going to count against you in graduation, account against your 4 year. And so that is a disincentive for schools very often. And students need time. They need, what we found is our students are highly motivated. They want to come to school. They want to do this, but they need time. They need time to learn the language. They need time to learn the content. They have, the Regents assessments that they need to pass. And so all of those things, like, schools want to support them to do this work, but the accountability is a huge issue for this particular population. I think the other thing too is, like, the great benefit that transfer schools have that not all schools have is the partnerships, is the community partnerships that are so essential to supporting students, the learning to work partnerships that they have, the internships, like many, the community, kind of the wraparound services that are so key. This is the main point of kind of connection with students and often their families, right? If they're here with their families. And so schools can be a great place to provide all of the wraparound needs so that students can be coming to school every day. So they can get support with the housing, that they can get support with legal services. That schools can be that connection, but they need the partnerships to do that and have it in place. And that's why even amongst our schools that aren't our transfer school, those that have community schools, some of them are community schools, not all of them, but the ones that are, have been able to just really create really robust supports for that. And I think the third thing is, like, a really strong counseling teams in schools, right? That speak the home languages of our families and students. And bringing in people from the community that are culture brokers, that are language broker. I mean, we've been able to benefit as a network because we've been around a long time, that we have brought our alumni back into the community. So across our schools, we have almost 60 alums that work in different capacities. We have our first principal alum, we have assistant principal alumni, lots of teachers, lots of counselors that were graduates of our schools that are able to provide supports for students and connections to families. And so I think bring opportunities to bring them into the building and hire them in different ways. Sometimes there's some challenges with hiring, but also just investment in those counseling teams. They are so critical because of all the supports that they provide for the needs of families and students.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing all of that and the great work that International Network is doing, especially for the Project Soaring program too. So let's open it up for questions. I think I see a couple in the Q&A feature, but if you have others, feel free to add it in now. We've got about 15 minutes for questions until our time is up. So thank you to our wonderful speakers. Some of these questions might make sense for you to take them. So if you have an answer, feel free to just unmute yourself to the speakers. We'll start off with the first question, and this might make sense for international or transfer schools. If an 18-year-old student has a job and needs flexibility to study and work, what would be your recommendation? You're going to take Principal Cohen or Principal Rothschild, either one of you want to take this?
I guess I can jump in, and Shweta, if you wouldn't mind filling in the gaps that I'm sure I'm going to leave in the answer. But I think what we really work with the students to do, and we sometimes help them connect with their employers as well, is to create schedules that complement their ability to be in school. Especially for the newcomer students, the consistency of learning, of being here to learn the language and to really kind of get into the community of this building is really important. And we find that, or we have found that the students who take jobs that prevent them from coming to school are not the ones that are the most successful. So I think we look to things like where it's possible for them to get stipends and to work in a school-based setting. And for some students who have like, we have students who have amazing language skills. Like we have students who are coming here speaking 9 languages and make them a huge asset in like a whole lot of settings. So to really try to connect them with places where that it's recognized that that is an asset, as opposed to, you know, that unfortunately many of the students are, especially the undocumented students we're finding are working in situations where they're being paid below minimum wage, and often they're being promised something that's not delivered after they've actually worked. So for us, it's really the priority is to get them as connected with school, and when possible, to get them connected through something that we vetted as a way of getting them paid.
Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to? Oh.
Yeah, I would just say, I think that's basically just reiterating what Alona said. And in addition to that, because our students are new to the country and new to language, we provide them all that, like the academic skills to learn. And it's so important for them to be in the school. Plus, there's a requirement for the kids to be in the school for minimum hours to for credit purposes. In addition to that, for attendance purposes. If we provide that flexibility to the kids, academically, it's the journey is going to be longer for them. Plus, we'll not be able to meet the accountability measures for the city as well. So I think, yeah, there's a little bit of challenge there, but at the same time, for the language, they really need to be in the school because then they learn the content and the skills and everything within the setting. But we do get the students who are 18 plus, they are working after school. Most of our kids are working after school, but we release them at 2:40. But this year I've started 11th grade, like last year I started 11th grade internship. So all the kids were going to internships. And this year we're going to start 10th grade internships. So anything they do beyond their school hours, they get paid for that if they're documented.
Thank you.
Can I just add one thing to that? I mean, I think that's a policy issue that we haven't like raised, but that does come up, right? Is that students, there's certain seat time requirements still that a lot of, you know, that we're beholden to in order for them to get credit. There's attendance requirements. And so it gets tricky for schools to actually have them implement that kind of flexibility. But I think what I see at a lot of transfer schools and international schools is because they get to know their students really well. They know the students that are working after school for, you know, 8 hours, 9 hours. There is flexibility when a student may come in late, or, you know, there's homework is done in the building with supports, rather than this expectation that you're going to get all this work done after, because they know the students are working. So it's like built into the DNA of a transfer school and the international schools to know that all of that stuff is happening after school, and provide that kind of flexibility within the limits of you know, policies and regulations.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good point, Lara. So I think maybe this next question would be for Brenda. Maybe we can combine these two questions, sort of about adult education. Are there plans to offer the GED and GED classes in French? And then regarding the Pathways program and the ESL classes for older multilingual learner youth, there were students who were placed on wait lists. Are there plans to increase the number of teachers available to teach those ESL classes at that level?
Yeah, so our office is constantly working. Both of these programs are under District 79, led by Superintendent Esperon. So we are constantly looking at the data and using it to inform the supports, and also where additional resources are needed. So it's a continued work in progress. We have been, according to like our student needs, that's how we're able to fund our teachers and to fund what our schools need. So as we kind of enhance programs, it's been responsive to the needs. The GED classes, that's something that I'm going to have to follow up on the availability on other languages. Not able to speak to that at this moment. But it's
Okay.
definitely feedback that's well received, and understand that there is a need to explore beyond Spanish, which is currently offered, and we'll take that back.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I actually had a follow-up question to, I think, the comment from somebody about how it's horrible to kick out the older students who are in the single adult shelters. They have the time limitations. I know there is, they have to submit a letter saying that they're in school, but are there, and we know that there's the shelter-based coordinators who are going to the family shelters and at the arrival center, but is there anything being done for those 18 to 21-year-olds who live in adult shelters? Is DOE going into those single adult shelters, or are they at the arrival center and identifying maybe one of these older youth who have not finished high school in their home country? Is there a way to sort of catch them before they get into a shelter? Because I know Adama's doing a lot of great work trying to find them, or they find her, and then they try and find us through her, but is there a better way to navigate the system for them?
Yeah, there are DOHMH staff at the adult centers, and they at the adult shelters, and they coordinate that support. Also, students can go to the Roosevelt arrival shelter or any family welcome center.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I think there's just a lot of unknown information out there. Great. Adama, did you want to add something here?
They actually cannot go to a Roosevelt because they won't let them in for that. They would actually have to go depending on what their situation is. But there is a hearing happening November 19th about the 30 and 60-day policy. As we all know, such an inhumane policy, and they have excluded young adults from who are in DOE, and it's a constant conversation that we have to have. But 18-year-olds and to 24-year-olds, they really have to rely on us, community-based organizations, to enroll them in school. They're not getting that. A lot of what we're seeing at Hall Street and at St. Bridget's is young 18-year-olds who want to go to school but aren't able to go to school. So there's a gap missing. I think the priority has only been focused on families and children, that they have excluded this entire population. Even with the mothers who are in the LIFE program, the HERC does not recognize them as a DOE program. So these moms get shoved around, but they're in a DOE school. They're part of a DOE program, but they still are shoved around. I think one of the biggest asks I can ask us all as educators and advocates is we really need to change this 30 and 60-day policy. It's inhumane on so many levels, and we should not be supporting something like this. And we need to speak to our elected officials. We need to speak to the mayor and say, we have to take this out. It does not make sense when someone is in school to take them out, to go to Roosevelt or to St. Bridget's, to sit there all day. And we also need to figure out how to properly get their documents without contacting their embassies, because we have seen children get extorted by their families because they found out they were in the United States. So we have to figure out, like us as Africana, we've been getting documents for children through attorneys from other countries. Even if they're coming from war-torn countries, we found a pathway to get them without notifying their country of origin that they're in the United States. So we have to definitely build some kind of policy around these youth, because they are phenomenal people and they desperately need our help. And we are their voices. We are their advocates.
Thank you for sharing that, Adama. And we have one last question from Iris about how to refer students to the YAB program. Brenda, do you have a link or a link that you can send to us, and we'll make sure to get it to all the participants?
I will send it. I'll send it to you in the follow-up email, Natasha.
Okay, great. So we will definitely share all the links that are being shared in the chat, and then contact information for our panelists if you want to follow up. We have a little bit of time, so I think it'd be great if we could have each of our speakers just, one piece of advice to those of people who work on behalf of supporting older newcomer youth, or if you want to have a piece of advice to the city on how we can better support these young people. So we can just start from the speaker order. We can start with Principal Ratra.
Yeah, thank you. I would say what I said earlier. I think we love to take the kids who need us, right? Because we have been doing this for a long time. We have all the system and structures in place and the support, social emotional support, and understanding particularly of the student population. We need more flexibility in terms of understanding, not flexibility. I would say like understanding the students, understanding how the schools support them, and adjusting the policies and procedures accordingly. Because right now, the way accountability works, it does not support us in taking, we still take the kids and we support the kids, but the accountability measures just are a big resistance and hindrance in the process. Particularly for other schools, for them to know, if they know that we are not going to be slighted on this policy or that policy, then I'm pretty sure other schools will also be ready to take the kids.
I definitely would echo that. And I would also add, I think this is, again, probably more for the city. I think the people who are doing the direct support work are the ones that we're looking to learn from, not necessarily give advice to. But for the city, I think transparency is really important. And I think for the DOE, centralizing resources as much as possible so that we can more easily support students to connect with what they need, and specifically in the languages that they need, and to really help us to, there are so many, it's the one beautiful thing about New York City is that it's just so huge and there are so many resources here. But what we really need is to know what they are and how to access those and how to get the right student to the right resource in the most efficient manner, because we're literally talking about it being the difference between sleeping on the street or sleeping in a bed, and people's basic safety. So transparency and really centralizing supports and access to resources.
My advice is really just being in this group is inspiring because everyone here cares about the student population as much as we do. And so my advice would be just to continue to help advocate for our students. Your advocacy pushes us to be able to advocate at different levels, right? Some of the policies we can influence in the city Department of Ed, and some we have to advocate to the state. And we do that. We fight the fight. So your advocacy helps us. And that, with that said, we're launching the Chancellor's Multilingual Advisory Council soon. We had a great turnout of people interested, and really hopeful that a lot of the voices, that there's a diverse set of voices and stakeholders who are going to be involved and are going to help us really boldly reimagine multilingual education. So really appreciate the conversation.
I think everybody said it perfectly. I definitely always want to highlight, let's get out of the language line. Let's make sure we're supporting our families and very humanizing them, and make sure that we have people that are representing them that looks like them on our team. And to Nana, I'm so proud of you. You are the reason why we do this. You are the reason why we show up, we advocate. I can't wait till you finish college. Please don't forget us. And I wish you the best.
So I would like to thank all of us to supporting us. I'm really, really, really happy because I see a lot of people care about us. So I'm happy for that. Thank you so much.
I think, one of the core principles that we always lean into at Internationals is the power of heterogeneity and collaboration. And I think that, speaks to this work, right? We all like live in different spaces, and we have different expertise in different spaces, but in order to really shift the system and support students, we have to collaborate and support each other, right? And I think, and to coordinate coordinate services for students and families, like support schools, provide the wraparound. So it really takes a lot of open communication among all of us and working together. I will say that for the advocates on the call, again, like reach out, let us know if you have students who need spots. We are please let us know. We will connect you to schools. Our schools are more than willing to take and welcome students at this point or at any time during the year. So let us know.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers for sharing so much great information and advice today. We hope everybody who's listening, you're able to bring some information back to your schools and communities. We've got some good ideas on improving policies to better support older newcomer students as well. Thank you to the New School. Thank you to the Levin Endowment for providing this forum. Thank you also to Clara Sylvan for helping to plan this event. And of course, the InsideSchools team who have worked tirelessly to support these resilient young people and who forged a lot of the partnerships of our speakers today. So we will be sending out an email next week with the recording as well as resources. And we thank everyone for joining us today. Have a wonderful evening.